Welcome back to We Want Picks. I'm Marthin. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the semi-finals for the featherweights and the light heavyweights of the PFL 2023 tournament. I'm going to be talking about this fight in a little bit of a different order. I'm going to be talking about the tournament fights first and then the prelim fights later. That's because I didn't really get too much around to the prelim fights. I've had a very busy last week at university. I launched a rocket in the weekend. I also started my boxing training camp this week as well for my debut coming up later in the year. I've got a lot going on right now, so I didn't really get too much around to the prelims, but I do have pretty good breakdowns for the tournament fights, in my opinion anyway. So hopefully you guys can understand. I am pretty busy outside of YouTube at the moment, but I will be breaking down the tournament fights, and I'll also give my quick picks for the prelim fights just at the very end. But as always, before we do get into the video, you can get a 3-day free trial by signing up to the premium membership and getting access to everything there using the code ARTIM. 3-day free trial, cancel at any time during that 3-day period. And now with all that being said, let's get into the predictions. So the first semi-final fight is going to be between Marthin, Hamlet and Impa Kasanganay. And Impa Kasanganay is a very significant favourite in this matchup. He's actually minus 300, which I do believe is a little bit wide. Now, Impa Kasanganay, if you guys don't know, used to fight at welterweight in the UFC. And then he moved up to 185 pounds. Fought for XMMA, which is a great regional promotion, knocked out Jared Gooden there. And then got signed to the PFL. Now, the PFL doesn't have a middleweight division. So now he's fighting at 205 pounds in PFL, and you can tell that he's very undersized for the division, but the skill set is there, and he has been able to get past a couple of pretty decent opponents to get into the semi-finals. Now, Marthin Hamlet, we know exactly what Marthin Hamlet does in all of his fights, for the most part. He's got a Greco-Roman base. He tries to take you down with his wrestling, and he loves to control you on top, and then work for submissions while he is on top of you. His striking isn't that great, and Kasanganay will be the better striker in this matchup. But that's how he's going to try and win this fight against Impa Kasanganay. He's going to try and bully Impa Kasanganay with his wrestling heavy style. And Impa Kasanganay, although not really being the biggest striker before leaving the UFC, he has managed to rack up a couple of KOs. He probably will be able to outstrike Marthin Hamlet in this matchup. The issue will be Marthin Hamlet really will be trying to bully him up against the cage and try and take him down with his wrestling base. But I think that Impa Kasanganay can win this matchup. I think he can keep the fight on the feet for the most part. He has shown very decent strength at 205 pounds. You know, he did just get past Tim Caron, who did fight him on short notice, but he did manage to submit him. And he did beat Corey Hendricks as well, which is a pretty decent win. Now, Corey Hendricks doesn't have the best record in the world, but he was on the Ultimate Fighter many years ago and has kind of been around for a while. But you know, I think it's a big step up in competition for Impa at 205 pounds, but I do think he can pass it. I think Marthin Hamlet does have a good chance at winning this fight. I think he's got a better chance than the plus 240 odds do suggest. I think those odds are a little bit wide, so I wouldn't really be playing Impa too heavy here, but I think that Marthin Hamlet could be a good underdog. Honestly, I think he's got a good chance of winning, but I think Impa is more dangerous. You know, he hasn't really gotten KOs until very recently, but he has shown that he can knock people out when he did knock out Osama Al-Saidi on the PFL Contender Series, I guess you could call it, and when he knocked out Jared Gooden as well. I do believe that Impa Kasanganay can win this matchup over Marthin Hamlet. It is worth noting, though, those 2 KOs that he got recently are the only knockouts of his career. For the most part, he was getting it done by submission or decision in the past, but I think he can beat Marthin Hamlet up on the feet, win a decision, maybe find a KO or a submission at some point, but I think he can kind of avoid the bullying that Marthin Hamlet is going to attempt to put on him. This next matchup is very interesting. I am going to be going with Gabriel Alves Braga, but the only reason I'm really going with Gabriel Alves Braga is because it is a full camp for him, and Chris Wade has taken this fight on short notice because he was meant to fight against a 22-0 fighter from Russia, Mavlid Kabuliev, who pulled out with injury, I do believe. I think that was a really bad matchup for Gabriel Alves Braga. This matchup is a little bit better. The problem is Chris Wade's probably going to try and take him down, and I think he can have a lot of success doing that. Gabriel Alves Braga, for the most part, is a pretty aggressive Muay Thai striker. He's pretty good. I actually thought that he did lose to Jesus Pinedo when they fought against each other. But before that, you know, he has been kind of getting it done over decent-ish opponents. He did knock out Marlon Moraes, but that's Marlon Moraes. It's just sad. But Gabriel Alves Braga, I think he can outstrike Chris Wade on this fight. I think Chris Wade does have a lot of potential to out-wrestle Gabriel Alves Braga. I think there's a very clear path to victory for Chris Wade. So a very low confidence pick here. But I do think Alves Braga, if he keeps the fight on the feet, he can outstrike Chris Wade. And I think he can win a decision, or maybe even find a knockout over an aging Chris Wade, who has 100% slowed down very recently. He's 36 years old now, or almost 36, and he has slowed down a lot from the Chris Wade that I have seen in the past. So I do have the very slight favorite, minus 145, Gabriel Alves Braga. Chris Wade is plus 115, but this fight, as the odds do suggest, is a very close matchup. I've got Alves Braga to win this matchup as kind of the underdog on Tapology in a way. And then we can move on to Josh Silveira taking on Tai Flores. I mean, Josh Silveira is going to win this fight. He's like a minus 500 favorite, I believe. He is minus 465. I think Josh Silveira is probably the favorite to win the whole tournament at this point. I think it's going to come down to Silveira and Kasanganay. But Silveira, he did lose last year to Omari Akhmedov, probably just too much too soon, because Akhmedov was a very good fighter in the UFC, was ranked at one point. And then he has kind of gone on to beat Sam K from Samoa, or Tonga, I believe Sam K is from. And then Delan Monte. That was an unfortunate win over Delan Monte because it was by injury, but Josh Silveira does have a very good skill set to beat up a guy like Tai Flores, who I honestly don't rate too highly. I've seen Tai Flores get boxed up by a 5-4 opponent in Ryan Parker. He was able to beat Delan Monte in a fight that did surprise me. He beat Dan Spone, and Dan Spone took that fight on short notice and was like almost 40 years old. But I think Josh Silveira is just going to finish him. Honestly, Tai Flores isn't that good on the feet. He does try and kind of bully you with his wrestling heavy style. He does like to clinch a little bit. He's a pretty big guy for the weight class. Both guys are listed pretty similar in height, 6'1 and 6'3, but Tai Flores is a pretty well-built guy. I do think that Josh Silveira, though, is just more technical, just a little bit more dangerous, more aggressive. I think we see Josh Silveira get a finish over Tai Flores in this matchup, so I'm going to be going with Josh Silveira to win inside the distance. I do believe that he can finish Tai Flores in this matchup here. And now we move on to Bubba Jenkins taking on Jesus Pinedo. Jesus Pinedo ruined PFL's plans. They ruined everything. He ruined everything for the PFL, man. Like when he knocked out Brendan Loughnane, who was probably one of the most popular fighters on the roster. Nobody knows who Jesus Pinedo is. Still, most people probably don't know who Jesus Pinedo is after he knocked out Brendan Loughnane, pretty much the face of the PFL. The guy that the PFL were saying is one of the best featherweights in the world. The guys that the PFL were saying would beat ranked featherweights in the UFC. And Pinedo comes out of nowhere and knocks him out with a knee to the face. I mean, this is a really, really bad matchup for Pinedo, though. Bubba Jenkins is going to beat him and probably finish him. Now, it does kind of come down to Brendan Loughnane, actually his fault for not being in the semifinals, because he messed around a lot against Marlon Moraes. Like, I thought Brendan Loughnane looked really, really bad against Marlon Moraes, but maybe that was just me. But Brendan Loughnane didn't knock out Marlon Moraes in the first round like he probably should have been able to, and that cost him. So now it's Jesus Pinedo taking on Bubba Jenkins. So, yeah, I think that we see Bubba Jenkins just put the wrestling shoes on. I think he can take down Jesus Pinedo at will. I think Bubba Jenkins probably wins the whole thing now, to be honest. We saw him look really, really good against Chris Wade, absolutely dominated Chris Wade in the wrestling. And then he submitted Sung Bin Jo, but Sung Bin Jo is a pure striker, just like Jesus Pinedo is. If Pinedo is not on the feet, he is going to be in trouble, because Bubba Jenkins is going to be trying to take this guy down often. I think he can do it. I think he's a very good wrestler. I think he can take down Jesus Pinedo often. I think he can work for finishes. He's minus 400 as a favorite. I think that's pretty fair. I mean, unless Bubba Jenkins gets KO'd, I think he's safe, man. I really do believe that Bubba Jenkins is the significantly better wrestler in this matchup, and I think that Bubba Jenkins goes out there and probably finds a finish. I think he can finish Jesus Pinedo on the ground by submission or by ground and pound TKO. So those are my predictions for all of the tournament fights. And now that the tournament fights are over, I'm just going to give a very, very quick sort of predictions for the prelim fights. It's going to be Billy Alicana taking on Chuck Campbell. I'm going with Billy Alicana, but this is a very, very low confidence pick. Chuck Campbell's a pretty good guy. He's fought again for Cage Warriors. He fought against Modestas Bukauskas. Did get knocked out by Modestas Bukauskas, but he has been there and fought a couple of good guys in his career in Cage Warriors as well. I think Alicana can get it done. Chelsea Hackett versus Kai Bennett's a weird fight, because Chelsea Hackett's fighting for the first time in years after she lost on Dana White's Contender Series. Very, very odd fight, but Chelsea Hackett has shown a lot of skills in the past. She does have a very strong base for MMA, and I do think she can beat Kai Bennett. She's the underdog. Definitely not really worth betting on this fight, though. Like, this is just it's a weird fight. Hackett genuinely hasn't fought for years. And you got Anthony Ivy taking on Carson Hardman. Carson Hardman should be able to pass the test of Anthony Ivy. Anthony Ivy is a good fighter. He's a former UFC fighter. He's fought a lot of good guys. He fought Basil Hafez, who then just went out there and had a close fight against Jack Della Maddalena. but I do think that Carson Hardman can pass the test of Anthony Ivy. Ivy's a very good grappler. He can get it done on the feet as well, but I think Carson Hardman, we do see him have a pretty good performance there. I'm going to go with Desiree Yanez to beat Lisa Molden. This is actually a fight I haven't looked into, so I'm going to be honest there. But we've seen Yanez fight pretty decent competition, and we'll move on from there. Thad Jean taking on Ali Omar. It's a fight for Thad Jean to win. Thad Jean's a very, very good prospect. The PFL picked him up, put him on their Contender Series, PFL Contender Series, Challenger Series is what it's called. They're going to build him up, kind of like they are building up a lot of other undefeated prospects right now, just like Alvin Espinoza, but I think Keone Diggs beats Alvin Espinoza. Keone Diggs missed weight for Bellator, and Bellator were like, we don't want people that miss weight, and they cut him. But I think maybe Bellator also cut Keone Diggs to, I don't know, maybe because they're being bought out, and PFL's picked up Keone Diggs because of that. Who really knows? But I don't think Alvin Espinoza is like the best fighter in the world, and Keone Diggs is pretty good. He's had a lot of success in Bellator, and I think that he can beat the undefeated Alvin Espinoza. So that's some very, very quick predictions for the PFL prelims. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.